we have a duty to keep exploring and finding a way to leave the planet because the planet would eventually disappear. Well, in the long term. But if we don't make it disappear, it will naturally disappear once the sun will expand too much. But from what you're saying, and I love this idea, you're saying actually that human being is by its nature meant to explore. As you said, the routine makes us get bored very quickly, so we need to explore. I love that. I love that idea. Inara, this pushes us now through another. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying we can see it in our children. So if you have a small child that can't quite crawl yet, we all know that moment as parents when suddenly they have the ability to move and they're going to move. They're going to climb and crawl and run and jump into things and explore things and put things in their mouth. And children are naturally what we are, right? They, as soon as you can, they do. And they want to see everything. They want to explore everything. They want to figure it all out. And I don't think we ever lose that. I think that's really what we continue to do as a species. We just get a little less clumsy, hopefully.
I love that. As an educator myself, I'm very fond of this idea that we are actually born, we have it in our DNA, this exploration reflex, I would call it, because it's coming naturally, isn't it? And now, the first thing we do as babies is to start exploring. First with our fingers, then with our mouth, and then we start seeing. I love that. Getting back to what we were talking about now, we may have a little bit later the opportunity to get back to this education aspect of it. But if I had to go up there at some point, what about educating us properly and not going there as colonizers, but as merely explorers? Let's get back to our point here, to space exploration and obviously the space race in our. When people hear today space race, they still think Cold War competition, Russians, Americans. But what does the new space race look like now in the 21st century? Is it a race at all, or is something else?
Maybe. I mean, I think that the origins of this, right, this idea of a space race, it goes back to the Soviet American Cold War. The media was very, very engaged in the 60s during this, era of Apollo and racing the Soviets. And that was the framework. That was kind of the playbook that they created, the media created to talk about these things. And so there was this long gap where it really wasn't newsworthy. We had like, let's say the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of newsworthy connection to the space industry. And so when we pick it back up, we get exciting again, and Elon Musk is doing these crazy new things and reusability is coming in. They didn't really have a culture to lean back on media wise, except for that space race concept. And so I think we did get where we could have just gotten this idea of Blue Origin and SpaceX, which is really the two they were putting against each other, just two companies doing great things and very different things, actually. We got, SpaceX versus Blue Origin, America versus the Soviets. It framed it just like it had been before, but it really isn't that, right? We have a lot of crossover between these different companies, and a lot of people are coming in and out of them, and there's a lot of collaboration behind the scenes that doesn't really make it to the press. So I think we have healthy competition, but we have more of an industry focus, right? It's about platforms and products and services, and ultimately it's about who's going to create that infrastructural layer, because we don't have a space industry, to be honest. When we talk about a space industry, we have a terrestrial industry focused on space to some degree, but it still is very heavily terrestrial. It depends on all of our terrestrial infrastructure. We'll have an actual space industry when we have infrastructure that allows for multiple industries. So I think a donut shop will be part of the space industry, right? We'll stop talking about space as a goal or as a product, and it will become just a domain. And it'll be a series of domains. So you'll have a donut shop, you'll be in space, so you'll be a space company, right? So I think that's where we need to reframe it, from space race to this goal that we share to build out these networks of industries in another domain.
Amazing. Yes, that makes perfectly sense. As you say, the difference between what's happening today and what happened during the Cold War is that we are now out of that paradigm where everything was national. Everything was about going up there quickly and put the flag. Indeed, now we see, and I'm happy to mention that, we see a situation where, despite quarrels on Earth, let's mention nothing but the war in Ukraine, for instance, which set up a huge media stunt against Russia, for instance. Well, I'm happy to say that that did not happen at all on the ISS. Americans have been collaborating with Russians perfectly, and, as you say, when you're up there and you look back, you see no borders, you see no wars, you see nothing like that. How do collaboration and competition coexist in the current era of space exploration?
Yeah, there's this moment that happens, if you leave your country and you go to Paris, for instance, and there's a huge throng of people, huge crowds of people, and you don't quite understand what's being said, and then suddenly you hear your native language. Um, you pop up, and that person's the most important person in the crowd, and suddenly you're connected in a way that you wouldn't be normally. You go have coffee, maybe. Maybe you go tour together. Maybe you get to know each other. Then later on, you've got this friendship. These kind of things happen because of moral distance, right? So if those same two people, let's say they're Americans and they're both from New York and they cross each other on a street in New York, maybe they wouldn't even make eye contact. Maybe they wouldn't even care about the other person, but suddenly something is a shared moment for them and it connects them. I would say when you're in the soup together, it has a sense, it has a way of bonding people very quickly, and culture, shared experience merges very quickly. So when you're in space, everything is trying to kill you. It's a little bit worse than Australia, not much worse, but a little bit worse than Australia. Everything's trying to kill you, and you're all up there together, and it no longer matters who your mother is, what land you came from, what language you speak. Is your oxygen going to be okay? Is a micrometeorite going to impact you? These are the things you share suddenly, and it consolidates you. So I'd say what we can see is when we get up there in that soup, it's going to change us. It's going to change fundamentally how we relate to each other. It's going to bridge that moral distance. It's going to create a new identity spectrum that we don't have now. It's very easy now to say, I was born here. Here's my passport. This is the holiday. These are the holidays I celebrate. These are my cultural expectations. But when you get up in space, it's going to be a whole new set of how we connect. That to me is amazing. That to me is beautiful because we don't quite know what's going to happen. We can send Russia, China, America, Iran up there. They can all have their own colonies. They can all create their. But eventually, what's going to happen is people are going to recoalesce around new ways